Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Darlene Salzer, and I'm a marketing manager here at Lindblad Expeditions. Just a couple things before we get started. If at any point you lose your connection to the video, just go back to the email and re-enter the webinar through the link provided. And I just want to mention that tonight, we'll see slides with photos and some great info on Alaska. And all these photos were taken on our expeditions. Also, on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a box where you can type in your questions. We definitely encourage you to go ahead and type them in throughout the presentation, and at the end, we'll take some time to answer them. I apologize ahead of time if we can't get to every single one, but we will definitely provide an email address where you can send your questions after. And also, we'll be including an extra thank you incentive for attending the webinar today. So if you're inspired to call us and make a new booking within the next 7 days, stay tuned for more on that. All right, let's go ahead and begin. 2012 marks our 30th season in Alaska. We've been bringing 2 ships back there every summer since 1982, and the experience we offer there, combined with our diverse staff's knowledge and their passion for sharing what they know, really enables us to provide you with the most in-depth experience in Alaska. We have over 50 years of expedition travel experience all around the world. Our founder, Lars Erik Lindblad, was the first to bring lay travelers to Antarctica and the Galapagos, and the first to lead expeditions to the Seychelles and Arctic Svalbard. Today, we're led by his son, Sven Olof Lindblad, proud to carry on the traditions of his dad. And we've always had a strong commitment to environmentally responsible tourism. In 2004, we entered into a strategic partnership with National Geographic, which was a natural alliance on many levels. Both organizations care deeply about exploration, discovery, conservation, and inspiring guests to explore and really care about the planet. So the partnership offers unparalleled benefits to you, enabling you to travel with some of the world's top photographers, naturalists, adventurers, researchers, and scientists. And I can't say enough about our staff. We've got the most robust expedition team working in Alaska with a wide variety of expertise. Every voyage sails with 6 naturalists, and for you this means more learning, more personal attention, and more flexibility in offering kayaking, hiking, and Zodiac exploration, so you can choose among activities operating at the same time. And speaking of staff, I'm thrilled to be joined tonight by Sue Perrin. She's a veteran expedition leader who's been with us for nearly 20 years, a great teacher and leader with a background in wildlife biology and teaching science. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Darlene, and welcome, everybody. I'm joining you tonight from Massachusetts and looking forward to sharing more about our expeditions with you.
And also thrilled to introduce you to Kim Peacocks. He's a National Geographic photographer and writer and a local Alaska resident. Are you there, Kim?
Yes. Hello, Darlene. Hello, everybody. Nice to be with you. I'm talking to you from my little town of Gustavus here in Alaska at the entrance to Glacier Bay. And it's nice to be on board. So thank you, Darlene.
Thanks. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sue first, and then Kim a little bit later to talk to you a little bit more in depth about our expeditions.
Yes, so besides the naturalists that Darlene mentioned, we also try and take advantage of meeting with some of the local researchers. And for the last many years, we have had a partnership with the Alaska Whale Foundation. These are researchers who have been specifically studying humpback whales in southeast Alaska. So every trip, as long as they are available and we can meet them somewhere along our route and their route, they come on board and share their recent findings about humpback whales. And often part of that includes seeing some critter cam footage, which was collected by National Geographic, where they put a camera on the back of a humpback whale. And one of the big findings and most interesting things that Alaska Whale Foundation studies is a feeding behavior that humpbacks have called bubble net feeding. And when we are able to find the whales doing this, it is probably the most exciting day of the trip, where a group of 8 or 14 whales gather together, all dive at the same time, set a bubble net. So a net that's one of them blows bubbles around a group of fish or krill, and then they come up through the center. So it's pretty amazing, and it's great to get to visit with these researchers. Even if we don't get to see this behavior, we get to see their footage that National Geographic Critter Cam has taken. And we also have a great collection of staff and crew on board. Many, many of the people on board have worked there for years. Some people take a break and go do something else, and they like working on the sea lion and seabird so much that they come back. It ends up being about a 1 to 2 crew to guest ratio. And of course, there's the expedition team in there as well. And I have to say, as expedition leader, having this dedicated crew, whether it's the hotel department or the officers or the deck department on board, really makes it a seamless operation. Everybody is very dedicated to making sure you have the best trip possible. So I get to plan what we're doing each day, and it could never be carried out so smoothly except with the help of these wonderful people I get to work with. And I know Kim wants to share some with you now, a little bit about photography and about our ships.
Right. Thank you, Sue. Photography has become a huge component of these trips. First and foremost, it's a lot of fun. And you learn, you share, you grow. And it's fun to see people being creative, being artful. You can shoot nature images, very artful images of the wildlife. Some of the animals are very nearby. A point-and-shoot camera can be just as exciting as a long telephoto lens. We call the point-and-shoot cameras aim and create. We do critiques in the evenings and afternoons if you want to grow in your ability as a photographer. It's really fun to see people having a blast and to see them improving. Lots of laughter, lots of good sharing. We talk about cruising for compositions on the ship itself, shooting from the deck of the ship through tight little passageways. Sometimes you feel like you can reach out and touch the boughs of the Sitka spruce and western hemlock. Bald eagles very nearby, remarkable birds on the water. Cruising by the Zodiacs, the small inflatable boats that take us from the ship to the shore. So it's a very nimble operation. It's not at all like a large cruise ship. We don't offer cha-cha lessons and napkin folding lessons and things like that. We're dedicated to learning and fun learning. To me, Alaska is the Africa of America. Alaska is what America was. I remember Mary Oliver said, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" And about the best thing you can do is come to Alaska. It's so exciting. In terms of National Geographic partnering up with Lindblad expeditions, to me, I compare it, I'm a musician, so I compare it with John Lennon meeting Paul McCartney, forming the Beatles. It's that perfect. It works so well. Being on the ship, being in the Zodiacs, or being in the fleet of, we have a fleet of kayaks, single and double kayaks, so you can again get really intimate with the water. And there's always a watch vessel out making sure everybody's safe, you know. But there's so much freedom. I think through all of this, on the nimble ship, the Zodiacs, the kayaks, walking ashore in the largest rainforest in the United States, temperate rainforest, you find out who you are. You find out who you used to be. The joyous kid you used to be when you were 5 years old and is still there. It is a huge deal. It's an expedition. It's not a cruise. It has all the adventure but none of the adversity. It's really a lot of fun. I'm honored to be a part of it. So looking forward to this summer. Right now, the sun is just going down where I live. It was only about 10 degrees above the horizon here. And in the summertime, it'll be way up high, and the days will be 20 hours long, and there'll just be life, wildlife everywhere. Exciting. So thank you.
Great. Well, I would like to continue. Again, this is Sue, and give you an overview of our expedition so you can get a feel for how things go day to day and what sort of activities you'd be doing and places you'd be seeing. On the screen, you can see just a sampling. Okay, that one went away. But on the screen, you could see a sampling
Sorry,
of
I can go back.
kayaking and the wildlife that you could see. And of course, bird watching and having binoculars along is always important as well. And I'll talk more about all of these as I go through them. So first thing I'd like to talk about are our Zodiacs. On board, we have 4 of these black rubber boats that you can see in the photo. These are the same Zodiacs made famous by Jacques Cousteau. They hold 10 to 12 people. Sometimes we put fewer. It depends on how many of you want to go out at a particular time and how much room we need for taking photos. We use these Zodiacs every day to go ashore for our hikes, but then we also use them to go out and explore. We'll go out to get a closer look at wildlife. Sometimes animals like stellar sea lions are easy to see in the water while they're swimming around. We can go bird watching from them. It can be a fairly fast-paced Zodiac cruise to get to a place where there's good wildlife, and then we slow right down and take lots of photos or get out our binoculars and do lots of watching. And in other places, we're going for some of the other wonders like blue icebergs and icebergs that we can get up close to in some of the places that we take the ship. So just a wonderful tool. Sometimes we don't go very far in them at all. It's just nice to get away from the ship and hold still and be quiet and listen to what's around us as well. We also have a kayak fleet. We have 12 doubles and 7 single kayaks. These are the hard-sided sea kayaks that you are probably familiar with. We usually launch them from the shore, but sometimes we launch them from the ship. We have a very good system for both of these things, and even if you've never kayaked before, they're very stable. We kayak on calm days, and we'll give you lessons. If it's something you want to try, this is a great way to do it. We'll offer a kayak outing, for an hour or an hour and a half, and then after that you have a chance to go hiking. And you can, this is one of the times in Southeast Alaska that you can decide if you want to go out and get exercise, you want to go paddle really hard, or maybe you just want to go slowly, be peaceful, listen to the surroundings, and be really calm and just take in the grandeur that's around you. And it's a great way to do that. I highly recommend kayaking for getting the peacefulness of Alaska. We do have some other tools on board as well, and these are tools that the naturalists will use to help you get a better look at or listen to what's going on. One of those is our ship's hydrophone. This is mounted underneath the ship, and when we are someplace where we think we might hear some whales, we will tune it in. And one of those times is when we're around humpback whales. It's summer and it's Alaska, so they're not singing the elaborate songs that they do on their mating grounds, but they do use communication underwater when they are bubble net feeding. So that can help us get a good feeling for when the bubble net feeding is going to happen. We also have video microscopes on board to use these. Naturalists would bring something back from shore or maybe some plankton. We have a net that will collect the microscopic things in the water so that you can see all levels of what's living around us. And so it's great. We can show the things in the microscope up on the TV screens in the lounge. So you get a wider view of things than you would expect because we're listening underwater, we're looking under the water, we're looking at microscopic things in the water. And another person on board that's part of the expedition team is an Undersea Specialist. We did a trial with this last year, and I was there for that, and it worked really well. So this year, both of our ships on every trip will have an Undersea Specialist on board. And this person will go diving in the 35 to 45 degree water with a camera and be taking video of what's underneath the water and then showing it to you in the lounge during cocktail hour. So these are people who know the underwater as well as diving, so they'll be giving you little educational presentations about what they've been seeing. So you get to do the dry snorkel, as I like to call it, which is perfect for Southeast Alaska. When we go ashore, we will be going ashore mostly in the Tongass National Forest. This is a 17 million acre forest, the largest national forest in the United States, and it is just a gorgeous place. You're in temperate rainforests, and these Southeast Alaska temperate rainforests are some of them have trails, but most of the places it might be a bit of a trail, or it might be a bear trail or a deer trail. And so we truly get out and explore on our hikes. You don't have to worry about keeping up with somebody else because we have several paces of hikes, so you can choose the one that's best for you. We'll have a leisurely hike that will just stroll and hear about natural history. We'll have a moderate, fast-paced natural history hikes. And then for those of you who might just need to get some exercise, because some people worry about being on a ship and are they going to get enough exercise, well, we also have a wellness specialist on board, and she will often, when we have a long enough trail to do it, will lead an aerobic hike. So if you want to pass on the natural history information for the afternoon, you can just go get a good workout with somebody to lead you, show you the way. And on this map, you can see the general area that we cover. This is, on these trips, we start in Juneau and end in Sitka, or vice versa. So it depends on which direction you sign up for. I'll be telling you how the trip works starting from Juneau, but we go to these same places in either direction. It's 8 days and 7 nights between the two places, and we have 2 departures weekly. We have 2 ships running at the same time, so one ship leaves on Saturday, the other one on Sunday. So when you see the dates in our brochure, they'll be back-to-back days for departures. And we have many landings to choose from. What we'll be showing you here, there's a few places that we always go, and then there's places that people like me, who are the expedition leaders, get to choose which hike to go to based on what the tides are doing, what we've heard about wildlife, what the group is like, and how much of a challenge or not the group is looking for, things like that. So we get to tailor the trip for the group that's on board. So one of our first stops, leaving out of Juneau, is to go to a place called Tracy Arm Ford's Terror Wilderness. And there are 2 beautiful glacially carved fjords that go about 35 miles inland. So you're surrounded by the mainland of southeast Alaska, and with towering rock walls glacially carved all around you as we go in. It is probably one of the most scenic places we go, and everybody loves it there. We work our ship in through the ice as far as we can go, and that varies trip to trip. We just never know. But usually we can get very close to the glacier. Sometimes we can get the ship right up within sight of the glacier. Other times we go by Zodiac to get a little bit closer. Regardless of how close we can get, we always put our Zodiac fleet in the water and get out for some ice tours. To get to sit beside a glacial blue iceberg is always a treat and a fabulous thing to photograph. Wildlife is another highlight of these trips. Bald eagles, those of you who have been wanting to see a bald eagle, this is the place to come because you will get to see plenty of them. You might even get tired of bald eagles by the end of the week, but I never do because they are such magnificent birds. Lots of other bird life, especially seabirds, that we see there as well. There's a lot of mammalian wildlife that we are always keeping an eye out for. We've already mentioned stellar sea lions in one of our other slides. There are also sea otters. In some places we might get to see mountain goats. We're always scanning for wildlife such as black bears and brown bears, and the more elusive occasional moose crosses our path, or things like that. One of our towns that we do always stop in is the town of Petersburg. Now, this is as far south as we go in southeast Alaska on this trip, and Petersburg is just a beautiful little fishing town. It's a lovely town. It is not a tourist town, so it's a small town. You know, they've got a few stores, and people like to go into the hardware store, and there's a few shops, little gift shops downtown. One of my favorite stops is the place that sells the smoked salmon that you can have shipped to your home. While we're in Petersburg, we have a fleet of bicycles, so you can go out and explore on your own if you'd like. And there's also a walk offered with the naturalists that will be a Muskeg walk. That's a beautiful habitat that's very unique that we will get to see. From Petersburg, another thing you can do is the optional flight seeing activity. This is one of the few things on board that you would have to pay extra for if you chose to do it, but it is a fabulous way to spend an hour. You get over the glaciers, and you really get a whole different feel for what a glacier is and what an ice field is, and to get up above the landscape is magnificent. And you can see in the picture we generally use float planes for that. From Petersburg, we head north, and the northernmost spot on our itinerary is Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve. It's the world's largest protected marine sanctuary. And when we're on board there, besides our team of naturalists, you'll also have a Tlingit cultural interpreter on board and a local Park Service ranger. So there are 2 local specialists on board, and we spend the full day going all the way as far into Glacier Bay as we can go. In 1794, George Vancouver came by that area in Icy Strait, and there was no Glacier Bay as we know it today. The bay was full of ice right out to a place called Icy Strait. Now we can go over 60 miles into the bay. So we spend the day on the ship going the full length. We're scanning for wildlife as we go. We go all the way up to Marjorie Glacier area, where we will have time to sit with the ship and hope to see glaciers calving, and get to hear the white thunder, which is the sound of glaciers calving off into the sea. So a tidewater glacier is one that's sitting with its face at the sea, and so that's what we're looking at when we're in Glacier Bay. At night in Glacier Bay, we'll get to go for a walk at the lodge that's there where we start from. Once we leave Glacier Bay, we go to another one of my favorite areas, which is Point Adolphus and Inian Pass. This area is right where the ocean currents come into southeast Alaska, and it's a great place for wildlife. So very often we are able to spot killer whales in this region or humpback whales. So we put our Zodiacs in the water to go wildlife watching. We spend extra time cruising and looking for whales, and when we're lucky, we do find them. And one of the nice things about our trips is that although we have an itinerary, I'm the one who gets to create what's called the intentions. We're also very flexible. So even if we were on our way to an anchorage where we were planning to spend the afternoon, if we see whales en route, we're going to change our plans and spend some time with the whales. So you don't have to worry about us driving by possible good wildlife sightings, because all of us are just as excited to see them as you are. One of the other wildlife we look for are black bears and brown bears. Sometimes we get to see them when we're kayaking or Zodiac cruising, but very often our best platform is to watch them from the ship. Our ship doesn't need very much water, so we can get very close into shore, and when we're quiet out on the ship, out on the deck, we can get quite close in and be able to watch bears going about their shoreline patrol. They often cruise the shoreline at low tide, flipping over rocks and looking for things to eat underneath in that intertidal zone. We, of course, will also be stopping for more hikes. Almost every day we go ashore and have a hike on one of the islands. Chichagof is one of the large islands, and we'll be sure to go for a hike there. And finally, we end our trip in Sitka. Sitka is a very interesting historic place. We'll visit the Sitka National Historic Park, where you'll get to learn a little bit about the Tlingit and the native peoples and see some of their totem poles. It was also the site in 1867 of the transfer of Alaska to the United States from Russia. And while we're there, we'll also visit the Raptor Rehabilitation Center. This is a place where mainly bald eagles, but also other injured raptors, hawks, and owls get brought for surgery or rehabilitation. Many of them are re-released back into the wild, and so you'll get some up-close and personal looks at these animals. And then we also visit the St. Michael's Russian Orthodox Church. In the summer, our trips are really great for families. It's summer vacation for most kids, and we love having families on board, and we encourage families to take our trips. If you are signing up and bringing kids with you, you can feel free to ask our folks on the phone which trips have kids if you're trying to make sure you're on a trip with other kids, because these kids really form great bonds with each other, the ones that they get to meet on the trip. And they also form really nice bonds with the naturalists. our whole team is very comfortable working with kids. We make special activities for them. We'll have scavenger hunts and Zodiac driving lessons and really try and get them engaged and hands-on things while we're out on the trail as a group. We also have a wellness specialist on board. This will give you several opportunities. Every morning there's a stretch class that's led by our wellness specialist. It's out on the deck, so you have to dress a little bit more warmly in Alaska, but it's very comfortable still. And the wellness specialist, as I mentioned, also leads aerobic hikes on land. But then she's available during the day if any of you wish to sign up for an optional massage or other spa treatment. So there are a variety of ways to relax once you're on board as well. And, of course, let's not forget eating. One of the things we do very well on board is eat, and we eat fabulous foods and have the most amazing galley team to serve them to you, to cook them for you. In Southeast Alaska, one of my favorite things is to get to sample the things that grow there, and the main things that we serve on board that really show the flavor of Alaska are the salmon, the halibut, the Dungeness crab, and other local seafoods. So it's a great place to get fresh fish, and almost every night there's an option that will be from the local area. But don't worry if you're not a fish lover. There are several other options every night as well, including a vegetarian option. So it's a great opportunity to try it, but certainly not a requirement. And finally, if you are wondering about a slightly longer trip, we do have one other trip that we do twice a season, in the spring and in the fall. It's our beginning of the season and end of the season trip that includes Alaska, British Columbia, and the San Juan Islands. So you get to do all of what I just told you about in Southeast Alaska, as well as stop at Misty Fjords National Monument, and then go to British Columbia, the Inside Passage, all the way down to Seattle and through the San Juan Islands on your way. So this is another sort of an extended trip, and get to see the whole coastline to do the entire Inside Passage. And I think, who am I turning over to now?
Tim, I'll take it from here. Thank you,
Tim,
Sue.
thanks.
Thank you. That was nice to hear all that. It's very reminiscent of the many trips I've had in Southeast Alaska. This is your opportunity, everyone, to, if you would like to take the extension from Southeast Alaska to Denali National Park and Preserve in the heart of the state of Alaska, you get to trade the tides of coastal Alaska for the tundra of interior Alaska. And this is a 6 million acre national park, so it's 3 times larger than Yellowstone National Park. It's roughly the size of the state of Massachusetts. And there's a single 90-mile long road that travels from the east end entrance of the park deep into the heart of Denali National Park, ending at Wonder Lake and the little settlement of Kantishna, about 25 miles north of Mount McKinley, or Denali. The peak is sometimes called the highest mountain in North America. It's 20,320 feet above sea level. And you stay at North Face Lodge, and only about, I would say, 5 to 10% of the people who visit Denali National Park make it this far out on the road. Many of the other tours through cruise ship companies only go to mile 17 or mile 54. So you get to go out the road, stop at Eielson Visitor Center, mile 66, go out to North Base Lodge, do day hikes from there, photographic excursions, see caribou, moose, loons, doll sheep, toklat, grizzly bears. It's remarkable, really. So it's a whole nother Alaska, and I think it's a really nice way, something important to consider for your trip up here. It's located 240 miles north of Anchorage and 120 miles south of Fairbanks. I consider it my second home in Alaska. I love it. So thank you. Now I think I hand over to you now, Darlene. Is that right?
Thank you, Kim. That's a great description Denali. I'm hoping to be lucky enough to get there one day. And thank you, Sue, for taking us through all that information. And thank you, everyone, for writing your questions in. We're seeing them, and we will get to them shortly. But just a couple more things before we get there. Definitely want to point out that our expeditions are an excellent value, and you can set foot on our ships without $1 in your pocket and have an amazing time. We take care of it all. So our prices include accommodations, ground transfers to and from the group flights, all meals, non-alcoholic beverages, plus 24-hour coffee, tea, and soda on demand, all the activities, shore excursions, and all Zodiac and kayak excursions, the tips, taxes, port charges, and service charges, the morning stretch classes with the wellness specialist, services of our expedition team, and they've got a full schedule of talks that happen informally throughout the trip as there are findings. And we also do this wonderful thing called the nightly recap, where the staff will go through highlights of the day or findings of the day, and we serve hors d'oeuvres and snacks during that. And we also provide you with complete pre-journey info, including what to bring and a reading list. And one person actually did ask, what do I bring? And just want to reassure you that at the end we have a whole little packing area for you, so we'll go through that to be sure. And also want to point out some of the distinct features that we offer, or that we have. You travel with an expedition team that's completely dedicated to seeing that you get the most out of your journey. And we also have the largest and most diverse expedition team in Alaska. You learn more through our alliance with National Geographic. We have that Lindblad National Geographic certified photo instructor on every single departure. There's also more learning about whales through the Alaska Whale Foundation coming aboard and sharing their insights with us. The robust set of tools for exploration that Sue had mentioned, those really help make the experience especially rich. The Zodiacs, the kayaks, the hydrophone, and our new Undersea Specialist, who will, reveal the brilliantly colored undersea. I think one of the really neat things that I had heard from the pilot this year was that, those colors really aren't only in the tropics. It's very bright and brilliant down there. Also, as the pioneers of expedition travel, and with our 30 years experience sailing Alaska, we know it better than anyone. Flexibility and choice are a hallmark of our expeditions, as Sue had talked about, and I've seen it where you might be at dinner and a humpback whale might be breaching outside, and the staff will just seamlessly accommodate both activities. Our commitment to conservation ensures that your visit will be a force for good in the region. And the food that Sue talked about is truly delicious, local, fresh, sustainable. We've got that vegetarian option at every meal, and we can accommodate dietary restrictions on request. We explore pristine areas by specially arranged permits, and we also have a video chronicler aboard to help record this once-in-a-lifetime experience that we're having. In addition, every season we've got a great lineup of National Geographic experts. So while every single departure does have the photo instructor on board, there are a few others. So on May 13 and 20 departures, we start off with Casey Anderson. He's a grizzly bear expert, and he's host of Expedition Wild on the National Geographic Channel. On June 9 and 16 departures, we have Birgit Bueller. You can see her there. She was a principal force in the evolution of National Geographic's Critter Cam. And Kim, who you met, who is really an amazing treat to travel with, will be on board on the July 29th and August 5th departures. And someone also asked, are there special photo departures? And the answer is yes, there are. We have 4 photo expeditions scheduled for this season, and these itineraries are really crafted to, towards photographers to take advantage of every photo op and of all the best light. So in addition to 1 National Geographic photographer on board, there are 2 Lindblad National Geographic certified photo instructors. And those dates are August 25th and September 1st with Flip Nicklin, and August 26th and September 2nd with Michael Melford. And we also have some great special offers that you'll want to know about, so I'll take you through those. Because it's our 30th anniversary and the first 2 departures of the season, that's May 1 and 2, and that's the 11-night trip, the longer trip. We're offering a 2-day extension in Seattle. It includes a custom tour, a stay in a waterfront hotel, and guided kayaking. The tour will include visits to Pike Place Market, the Pacific Madrones, Discovery Park for wildlife sightings, local neighborhoods, chocolate tasting, and other stops along the way, and a send-off dinner at Ray's Boathouse, a nice classic Seattle restaurant on the water, where you'll dine and toast with some office staff that we've got in Seattle. And that needs to be booked by March 15th. We also have free air offers on some of the May and June departures. On our longer trip, the same May 1st and 2nd departures, we have free one-way air on your return from Sitka to Seattle. And on the main itinerary, the 7-night trip, we've got free round-trip air from Seattle to Alaska on select May and June dates. And both of those need to be booked by March 31st. So we don't have the date specified here. They change based on inventory, so we absolutely encourage you to call us at 1-800-EXPEDITION, and our expedition specialist will give you the latest dates that that's available on. We also offer savings for families. So each person under the age of 18 can take $500 off the double occupancy rate. And finally, as we promised, we are giving a special exclusive for webinar participants only, and this is an additional $250 per cabin booked on any new bookings made within the next week by January 17th when you mention that you attended the Alaska webinar. So that is for new bookings only, and we hope that you'll be inspired to call us. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kim to talk about what we should pack in coming to Alaska.
Right. Thank you, Darlene. Well, Alaska is my home, so I love it here, and I'm partial to living here. People often ask me from down south, what's it like there? And typically in the summertime, I'd say it's between 45 and 70 degrees. Typically, a typical day in southeast Alaska in July, let's say, is 55 degrees and overcast, but not raining. So the trick, I think, is to dress in layers, and this can be fun. I would recommend that you don't wear a lot of cotton, because cotton, if it gets wet, it stays wet, and it just wicks the heat out of your body. Your body heat will not dry it out. I recommend that you dress in layers with an underlayer, let's say polypropylene of some sort, and on top of that some fleece or pile or wool, and you put these layers on it. Be an onion, right? So you can add layers and take them off if the day warms up. If it's a beautiful sunny day, it can get up to the low 70s. It can also, off of a glacier, get down to lower in the 40s, a cool wind coming off the glacier, but it's very invigorating. So I like this series of pictures. It's Pete and Gretchen Peterson, two of our staff naturalists from Bend, Oregon, and they're showing the layers that you can wear, the rubber boots that you should bring, non-skid soles, come halfway up your calf, almost to your knees. You can find them in most any hardware store. Good non-skid soles. And you want to bond with your boots. Go out walking around your hometown before you come up to Alaska and get used to moving about in them. And don't be daunted by the weather. There's really no such thing as bad weather. There's only inappropriate clothing. So it's fun dressing up in the layers, and the expedition leader every morning will give you an idea of what the conditions are and how to dress. So have these materials with you and bring a good day pack to bring extra items with you and a good sturdy day pack. And it's just a lot of fun. Summer in Alaska is very exuberant. It doesn't feel as cold as it really is because you're just on fire with excitement every day, seeing new cool stuff.
Well, thanks, Kim. That's great. It's a great overview. And just the last thing before questions, we do want to encourage everybody to check out our website at expeditions.com. We've got our detailed itineraries there. We've got a live, daily expedition reports. So they're live reports from the staff on our ships each day, videos, staff bios, and we also, of course, have a social media presence on Twitter, Facebook, and a blog, which is expeditions.com/blog. So we hope to see you there. And now to the questions. Thank you so much for everything that you've been writing in. And I didn't mention this, but I should, that expeditions.com/webinars, you'll be able to find this webinar recorded and webinars on all of our destinations. So as we were saying, on to the questions. There are a few that have been coming in, and I want to start with one that's, Sue, maybe you can talk about this. Someone is asking, they're saying, my wife gets seasick easily. Is that going to be an issue, and how will that work?
Yes, easy question to answer for Southeast Alaska. One of the things that the Inside Passage is known for is that it is on the inside, meaning protected from the ocean. So most of our cruising in Southeast Alaska is very calm. You won't be getting rough seas. You won't be getting, even if it's windy, you generally don't have much in the way of motion. Now, if she is super susceptible to motion sickness, I would encourage her to bring along seasickness meds, but it is typically not a problem for the majority of our guests in Southeast Alaska. There is one day where I mentioned when we're in the Inian Islands where there can be some swell coming in from the ocean there, but that's only maybe for an hour as we transit through that area, so it's a time that you can be well planned for ahead of time. But no, the Inside Passage has that name because it is in those protected, within the protection of all the islands.
Thanks, Sue. You know, and something else that a couple people are asking about in relationship to the wildlife, and Sue, maybe you can answer this too, is what about mosquitoes? Are there mosquitoes in Alaska?
You know, it's very interesting. In Southeast Alaska, I've traveled in many places in Alaska, and Southeast Alaska does have some mosquitoes at a couple of stops. Depends on the time of year, and it's really hard to say because, you know, spring shifts by 2 or 3 weeks every year. But maybe 1 or 2 hikes there will be some mosquitoes, and we have plenty of insect repellent on board. Most of the time, when you're on board the ship, not a problem at all. When we're cruising, not a problem at all. And on most of our hikes, not much of a problem. So it's not like you have heard about the mosquitoes in, say, the Brooks Range or something. Those were impressive. I've been there. But Southeast Alaska, plus you generally have on rain gear, so there's very little skin available for, or if you don't have on rain gear, you have on long sleeves. So there's very little skin available for mosquitoes anyway. So we have insect repellent if you need it. To me, it's never a big concern. There's 1, maybe 2 hikes that we'll see some for part of the season.
And I have to say, in the 1 week that I got to spend there, I didn't even notice them at all. Have you, Kim, seen a lot of them?
No, they're not. They're just pretty insignificant in Southeast Alaska. They're not that abundant at all. I agree with Sue. Maybe 1 or 2 hikes throughout here and there, but largely you don't even think about them. They're just not a factor.
Great. And Kim, a question maybe you can answer. Some people are asking, what is the best time to go weather-wise? And also, as an extension to that, how cold is it in May? And what's the average temperature in, say, June, July versus May?
I would say the first part of that question is, I think if you look at the weather records throughout the summers in Southeast Alaska, the better weather, if you're looking for clear sunny days, is earlier in the summer. May and June are sunnier months than July and August. But when the sun is out in July and August, they tend to be warmer days than they were in May and in June. So if it's a nice sunny day, it'll get up to 70. Some days have gotten quite warm historically in the past and gotten up to 80. They're rare. And it can get a little breezy and cool on some overcast days down into the 40s. But I would say, and Sue, what do you think of this? I would say almost that 75% of the days in Southeast Alaska, it's in the 50s. It's overcast, maybe a light rain, maybe mixed sun and clouds dancing around 60 degrees Fahrenheit, high 50s, low 60s, somewhere right around there.
Yeah, Kim, I agree. People, when I'm on the ship, always say, did you look at a weather forecast? Do you know what the weather's going to be tomorrow? And I always laugh and I say, yep, the weather forecast always says the same thing. It says it's going to be between 55 and 65 with a chance of rain,
Right.
cloudy with a chance of rain.
Right. But I
that
do,
could mean anything from it's going to be sunny to there's going to be a light rain.
right. Yeah. And I think as far as photography goes, some of my favorite photography is during the overcast periods or when there's water on everything. So you don't need sunshine. Sunshine makes nice postcard images, but oh, I love the overcast days for working with my camera.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, we did get some questions in about photography and about cameras, and one person asked on the photo expeditions, do the photographers stay on the National Geographic stay on the whole time? The answer is yes, they do. They are there. But Kim, maybe you could address this a little more specifically. Someone asked, what size lens do I bring to capture wildlife from the bow of the ship? Is 400, 500 millimeters adequate?
Oh, very. Yes, 400 millimeter is more than adequate, I believe. Yes, so the answer to that is yes. I would also encourage, if you're interested, to bring a wide-angle lens and a macro lens for all the beautiful small details at your feet and the flowers and the plant life and such. So 400 millimeter lens is a marvelous lens, 300, 500. What have you. Telephoto, my 70 to 200 is often, I'll shoot all day long just with that lens. So if you can have a 400, a 70 to 200, a macro, and a wide angle, you're set. Maybe if you're a real serious photographer, 2 camera bodies in case one gives you problems. Extra batteries, of course, for any camera you may be bringing, and plenty of cards.
Great. Okay, and Sue, maybe you could address this one. There's a guest asking, saying they have the flexibility to travel in early or late season. They want to maximize time for wildlife sightings. Is there a difference in different parts of the season in terms of seeing, you know, bears with salmon, whales feeding, etc.?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I was there early season last year, and I've been there late season fairly recently. And you see lots of wildlife both times. What you see shifts a little bit. I do have to say that in May this past year, before the leaves were out on the trees, I'm pretty sure we saw more bears than we have ever seen, because there was, in early May, there's not as much greenery because things are just starting growing. So you get to see it at the beginning of the season, but it also means that it's easier to find critters that are wandering around on the hillside. So we saw a lot of wildlife, and you see a lot of bears coming down to the shoreline. It's early for the bears. They have not been out and about for very long, so they are, and there's not all that much to eat, so they're coming out to the green meadows, the lush meadows, or right along the shoreline of the ocean to look for intertidal things. Now, I'll keep talking about bears and then switch. As you go later season, like August, you get salmon runs. So then the bears are in a different place. Occasionally, we'll get to see bears in the salmon streams. There's one that we can get to have a view by Zodiac. There's a couple of other places we hike where there are some salmon streams. It also sometimes means that our hikes get turned around, because if there's bears on a hike, then we'll leave the stream to them. But if you want to see salmon in streams, you should definitely go late season. You'll see black and brown bears both early and late and in the middle. As far as wildlife goes, marine wildlife goes, the Steller sea lions are always there. The sea otters are always there, so that doesn't change much. Killer whales we see equally well all season long. Humpback whales, they do start their bubble net feeding. They tend to start their bubble net feeding later, generally not in May, sometimes by early June. Though last year it was a really hard thing to find, so going in late season gives you a better chance of seeing that, but it's not a guarantee. That help?
That's great. Thank you. Someone is also asking, and I can answer this one, is there AC for laptop operations? And the answer is yes. There are places to plug in your laptop. You can buy an internet card to log on and connect to the internet, but it is spotty because we are taking you out into the remote world. So it's part of the charm. It was, personally, I loved being disconnected for a little while for a change. It was nice. Let's see. It also, Sue, for you, someone is asking, what is the typical daily schedule in terms of meals, activities, sailing, etc.?
Oh, yeah. Good question. A typical day starts at 7. I do a morning update to let you know where we are and what the conditions are and if we are really doing what I said we were doing the day before. Sometimes things change overnight. And then we have a stretch class at 7. Breakfast is at 7:30. It's a buffet and goes for an hour. And then on a typical day, we have a morning activity plan that starts sometime between 8:30 and 9, depending on the activity. It might be a hike. It might be kayaking. It might be both of those things. It might be a Zodiac cruise. And then we're always back on the ship for lunch. Lunch is at 12:30 till about 1:15. Often it's a buffet, but sometimes it's sit-down family style. And then we go out for an afternoon activity in a different location. Again, could be any of the things mentioned, Zodiac, kayak, hike. Or sometimes one of our activities is that we're spending the afternoon cruising with the intention to go into some areas that are good for wildlife and hope to find some. And then we are back on board typically by 6, and cocktail hour is usually 6 to 7 or 6:30 to 7:30, depending on our timing that day. And the last half an hour of cocktail hour is the recap that Darlene mentioned. And then we have a sit-down dinner at 7 or 7:30. In the evening in Southeast Alaska, it is so light, so late that we very often have wildlife sightings after dinner. And we also will offer other activities after dinner, maybe a talk or a movie or some other presentation.
Great. Great. And Kim, a couple more questions I thought I'd send your way. One is, someone is asking, what is a muskeg?
Well, muskeg is about 10% of the Tongass National Forest, this very large national forest in southeast Alaska. About 10% of it is muskeg. It's a water-soaked, tree-stunted area. You get these shore pines growing there. They look like little bonsai pines and lots of small vascular plants. But it's so water-soaked that most large conifers can't grow there, trees can't grow there. So it almost looks like a Japanese bonsai forest with small stunted trees. And where we take people hiking in the Muskeg, especially near Petersburg, one of my favorite hikes, there's boardwalks that lead through the Muskeg. They're just, and with little ponds here and there, just beautiful. Labrador tea growing all around, small delicate flowers. So that's a muskeg. It's a part of the area that we explore. It's beautiful.
Great. And a couple people, just two things. A couple people are asking about fishing. And as far as I know, Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't offer fishing on our expeditions. But for me, it didn't come to mind because we were so busy kayaking and zodiacking and everything else.
Yeah, we do not offer it during the week, depending on which way where the trip ended. I know that in the past we have sometimes had an option out of Sitka on departure day to pay for a fishing trip on their own. I don't know if we're doing that again next summer, but if we're not, that is something, if somebody was really interested in fishing, if they signed up starting in Juneau, ending in Sitka, they could choose to spend an extra day or see if they could get a fishing charter for the morning and still go with the group flight. And could ask maybe Darlene and find out if we will have a connection with that. But I know that there is fishing out of Sitka.
Okay, great. And Kim, we have a few people that are birders that are asking different things such as, are puffins seen?
Yes, right. We get the chance to see both tufted and horned puffins, mostly in Glacier Bay, but we can also see tufted puffins on the Inian Island Day in Icy Strait, which is the day next to the Glacier Bay Day. But we go right by South Marble Island in Glacier Bay, in the middle of Glacier Bay, working our way up to the Tidewater glaciers, and we see tufted puffins on the water all around us, flying up to their little cliff nests right above the cliffs where they have their little burrows, and then horned puffins as well, not quite as numerous. But yes, the answer is yes. We'll all see puffins. Great.
And I think we can take a couple more. There's so many good questions coming in. So, Sue, what about the large cruise ships? Do the locations get crowded?
Well, you saw the photo of us parked beside them. That was in Juneau, and Juneau is one of the main turnaround spots for the larger cruise ships, and that's the main place that we see them. So on your starting or ending day, there will be other large ships around. When we go into Glacier Bay has limits, a certain number of ships per day. There are 2 very large cruise ships allowed per day, and I think 2 of the expedition-sized ships of ours, maybe 4 of those allowed per day. I think it's 2. And so Glacier Bay is a really large place, so we will see them in the distance. They're kind of nice to have for scale, so you can see just how big those mountains are. And then other places, they are not stopping in the small coves and going hiking and going out in Zodiacs. So really, we don't go to any of the other places that are popular for the large ships, and that's by design.
Yes, and reflected, too, in a lot of the photos you're seeing here. We're not, turning the camera to hide other ships. This is really how it looks. And then we have time for just one last question. So, Kim, I'll ask you. Someone is asking, are there accommodations if you are traveling alone, such as a community table? So if you're a solo traveler, how does that work on the ship in terms of meals, et cetera?
If you're traveling by yourself, it's open seating, all the meals in the dining room, and you'll find that people mix and match readily. Lots of new friendships are made on these trips, and the staff also will be very attentive to a single passenger, a single guest, and we always come into the dining room and join those people that have a chair next to them. And so I don't think anybody will be lonely or feel isolated on these trips at all. It's pretty embracing. You end up sitting right next to other people on the Zodiacs. You talk on the way to shore and back, and you resume that talk in the lounge, and next thing you know, you're eating a meal together in the dining room. Does that address the question?
It sure does. All right. Well, I would love to stay on with you for an infinite amount of time, but we do have to go. So if you do have any questions or you want to send us follow-up, we didn't address your question, please feel free to send us an email at webinarinfo@expeditions.com or just give us a call at 1-800-EXPEDITION. We're here until 8 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, and throughout the weekend we're also open on weekends. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sue and Kim, so much, and thank you, everyone, for taking the time out today to join us. We really appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thanks, Darlene.
Thank you, Darlene.
For joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you in Alaska.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.